evening, everyone. Dean, good to see you on the call as well. Dean is checking in all the way from, where are you, Dean?
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Grant. It's awesome to see you. I
Good to see
am
you.
dialing in from an island called Guernsey, just off the coast from the UK and France. And I'm so happy to join, or very excited to join this session because, as Grant know, I've always been passionate about cybersecurity and also want to obtain my CISSP within this year, if possible. Thanks, guys.
No, no, thank you. Thank you for that. I think what will be really cool if everybody can maybe just type in the city where they are dialing in from. We've never done it before, but maybe just do that as and when you have a moment. But let's get started. So thank you for joining. I think as security practitioners, at some point in time, CISSP has come across our radar. You know, we know about this thing called the CISSP. Most of us want it, and probably most of us have a lot of questions around, you know, is it worth it? Is it difficult? You know, what kind of doors has it opened for you? And that's where this webinar was born out of that. And what we're going to do is we want to keep it really informal. So we've got a couple of questions that we're going to step through. But if you've got specific questions that is not covered, please pop it in the chat and we will make sure that we address it. What we're going to cover is, you know, why did you decide to do a CISSP? So all four of us on the call, myself, Chad, Iain, and Faseeg, we all have obtained CISSP at some point or another. We're active members, active holders of this credential. So we'll explain, you know, from our perspective, what made us embark on this journey. In what way did it add value to our career? You know, was it what it promised to be? Was it what we anticipated it to be? In terms of prepping for it, how long did it take? What kind of materials did we use? And what advice would we give to anybody that's thinking about CISSP? And outside of that, you know, any other questions you might have on the topic. All right. So I think without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So Iain, maybe from your perspective, you know, what made you decide to go down this path and get a CISSP certification?
Okay, so I did mine quite a while back now. I'm probably 12 years in, I think. But I was relatively new to security, or particularly cybersecurity. So I had some exposure to some, you know, network security. You know, I came from a networking background before that, so I did some security and networking. I understood probably identity and access quite well, but there was lots of stuff I didn't know. You know, and I kind of at that point decided, okay, I'm gonna specialize in security. So I was recommended, go look at CISSP. And I think that whole metaphor about being an inch deep but a mile wide was really what made it useful for me, because it, you know, opened my eyes to all sorts of aspects of security I hadn't considered previously.
No, thank you. Faseeg, how about you? What made you decide to do this? You're on mute, eh?
Okay. I think Iain made some very, very good points that resonates. I mean, I'm about 6 years in my CISSP now, and funny enough, I was told to do it. So I think I came from a background of architecture and end-user architecture, infrastructure architecture. I joined the security team, and my then mentor said, listen, I want you to do some certification. I said, okay, cool. I'll do the CompTIA Security Plus. He said, no, I want you to go into the CISSP. Everybody's eyes opened wide and said, but, you know, it's quite impossible in 6 months. So yeah, I mean, I think I did it. And when I did it, I think, you know, it seemed like Iain, it opened up my eyes to quite a bit. At the time, I think, you know, at some point in our career, over a span maybe of 15 years, you touch on various domains and you kind of dabble in like, you know, maybe the security operations domain without realizing it. And then in an identity and access management domain without realizing it, because you play around with some Active Directory and, you know, some recertification, etc. But I think, you know, once you actually understand the frameworks and the principles, it then makes more sense to you. So once you've done the CISSP, your eyes just open up and you go, oh, okay. And then you can be quite passionate and decide, you know, which area you'd like to go and specialize in. But yeah, to cut it short, I was actually told to go and do it.
Thank you. So tell me, Chad, how about you? You know, what was the driver for you to do a CISSP certification?
Yeah, no, good question. So I think I always looked up to CISSPs in my cyber career. I've had it for now about 8 years. I started as a sysadmin and then moved into cybersecurity at various MSPs. And I've got a funny story in which I was one day troubleshooting quite a big incident. And the troubleshooting had revealed that there was potentially a cybersecurity product blocking business traffic. And the ISM at the time didn't believe me. And I was chatting to my colleagues about it. And they said to me, you're never going to get leeway with the CISSP not having a CISSP. And from that minute on, I made myself a promise that I would get my CISSP.
No, awesome. My story is quite simple in a way that, you know, I was working in end user computing and I wanted to break into cyber. I did some research. I spoke to some people and mentors at the time, and they said to me, look, you know, the gold standard in this industry is a CISSP. And you know, when I heard that word gold standard, it became an instant dream, and it became a bucket list item, and that's where the journey started for me. So tell me, on to the next question, and maybe Iain, back to you, right? So obviously when you went down this path, you anticipated some kind of value return on investment. How
Yeah.
have you found the CISSP to open doors for you, if any? You know, what kind of value did it bring to you in terms of career prospects, but also in terms of confidence?
Yeah, I think I think the confidence is definitely one. You know, as I mentioned earlier, there were lots of things I didn't really understand. I don't know. Cryptography is a good one, right? I know what it does. I don't know how it works, but you know, it forces you to really, you know, dig deep into some of these things. And then when you get challenged on it, you know, you're equipped to answer it well. I think, you know, in terms, you mentioned return on investment. I wouldn't say it was instant. I think the point I would make about CISSP, and you know, you can't get it with a certain amount of experience, but it has to sit alongside experience. You know, just getting a CISSP isn't going to make you, you know, the greatest consultant out there, or the greatest architect, whatever it is you're aiming for. It goes hand in hand with experience. But I think now, quite a few years down the line, coupled with the experience I've got, it puts me in good stead. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would be where I am, you know, today if I hadn't taken the time and the effort to actually go and do it. So I always recommend it.
No, thank you, Iain. Faseeg, how about you? You know, how did you find this to contribute to your journey?
I'll just off Ian's words as well, and the big disclaimer to everybody wanting to do a CISSP, cryptography was my hardest module. So, and it took me a while to actually grasp that concept. And I think, speaking about ROI, I think lots of people have different ideas of ROI. I mean, some would look at it as maybe, you know, having a monetary ROI and getting a big job with a big salary, but even that takes time. And I think since I got my CISSP about 6 years ago, I had lots of, I mean, and Chad and Iain will say as well, as he was well gone, lots of knocks on the door, lots of recruiters, lots of interest, and I ended up taking none of them, actually, funny enough. For me, the CISSP was, again, also same as Iain said, a big confidence booster. When you're going consulting to organizations and they know you have a CISSP, they almost instantly trust you, but they shouldn't, but they almost instantly trust you in terms of what your views are, because it's backed up by experience, because it's backed up by, obviously, with the book of knowledge, and obviously because, you know, you've just gone through the process of, you know, going through all these concepts and frameworks that, you know, that you can spit out this jargon. Maybe some people don't really understand, but I think that for me was the biggest thing. It was really for me to be able to go and have discussions with different individuals and being confident enough to answer them.
Thank you, Faseeg. And Chad, how about you?
Yeah, I really concur with Iain and Faseeg. And one of the things that they said that really rings home for me is it gives me confidence, you know, to walk into a boardroom, to chat cybersecurity to board level execs, and to have the confidence that I know just enough inch deep in cyber that if they throw me a question or something I haven't touched, I will at least know enough to understand and speak to that subject matter. And I really think for me, that was the return of investment. It's going into boardrooms with confidence rather than with fear.
No, 100%. I think from my perspective, what I appreciated most about it is the fact that it's vendor agnostic. So you could specialize in a technology platform like Microsoft or AWS, and you could go very deep, right? But when you go CISSP, you go broad, mile wide, inch deep on a principle basis. So in any environment, you can hold your own. I found, in my case, I was a bit fortunate that shortly, and maybe not 100% attributed to the CISSP, but within the 30 days of getting the CISSP, I also got a new job. So I kind of saw that quite instantly. Again, not 100% attributed, but from a confidence perspective, it certainly does add a lot. Um, so yeah, I'll say that I've never regretted going down that path. It was quite intense to get it. But it highlights, it opens your eyes to all the unknown unknowns. Because once you go through the official book, and the official book, the green book, is about 1,500 pages, right? You realize that there's just so many things you don't know, that you don't even know you don't know. And you start reading up on topics, and then outside of that you go into more deep dives, and it just expands your mind completely. What also helps is if you look at jobs being advertised, almost every second job, and maybe it's not the correct thing, but almost every second job is asking for a CISP. So it certainly does add a level of marketability to you as well. um I think for the next question, maybe let's shift gears more into preparing for this, because it is a beast. For me, I've done in excess of 25 different certifications. CISP, one of the two most difficult ones I've ever done. And it is difficult in my view. And maybe we could start with Iain to say, how did you find this exam compared to other studies you've done? And how did you prepare, and how long did you spend preparing for it?
Okay, so honestly, from the day that I decided I was going to do it to the day I passed the test was probably 2 years. But the first year and 3/4 of that, I wasn't dedicated. Like, I kind of thought this would be cool. I'm going to download a book. Oh, maybe I'll read a chapter. I read half a chapter, and then, I don't go back to it for, a few weeks. And, a year and a half in, I realized it was never going to happen. So what I eventually did is I really committed to it. I spent a 3-month period of actually making sure that I had a study plan. I was, sticking to it, making notes, reading my notes. Everybody, has a different way of learning stuff. My first reference was to download the guide, the book, and start reading it. And then I remembered, hey, I'm rubbish at reading stuff from books. So I found a good video series, and that's what did it for me in the end. Was a webinar, a video series of people who presented the material quite well. And that was good because when my attention waned, I could pause it. I can pick it up again where I left off, and then it was about making notes, reading the notes, and doing the practice exams. Right, I think that's always important. But I think for me, you just got to find your own way. If books are your thing, use books. If they're not, try the videos. If they're not, try the practice tests.
100%. And tell me, in terms of difficulty, how did you find that the actual test itself?
Well, I believe it's shorter now, but when I did mine, it was a 6-hour exam. And I don't feel like I do these things very quick, particularly read quickly. But yeah, the 6-hour exam, I knew how many questions I had to do each hour. So I had to, I was watching the clock, and I was like literally chasing the clock. I knew, must go faster. I'm running out of time. I literally answered the last question as my 6 hours ran out, and I wasn't feeling massively confident at that point. And I know I was, so I found it tough. So yeah, I felt almost a little bit surprised when they said you passed, because I wasn't feeling confident.
No, I can relate to that,
Yeah.
Iain. Faseeg, how about you? Take us through your journey of preparing for this. How long did it take you? How difficult was it, in the whole experience?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not like I'll say it verbatim. I don't think I'm the smartest person around. I think for me, I've always had difficulty studying. There's always and the Cybex book. I think the Cybex book's a new books. It's 1,500 pages. There was no ways I was going to read the book. I actually I actually went and looked what the shortest book on CISSP was. Not because I'm lazy, but just I have difficulty concentrating for long periods. And I found a book by Eric Conrad called The 11th Hour, a CISSP guide. It's not in detail, but it will teach you enough to understand what the exam's about. But over and above that, I went through a couple of the domains. There were domains I felt really comfortable in, like, security operations or identity and access management. And I thought to myself, I don't have to study them in detail. I can touch on the important points. I did a couple of exam banks just to get a feel for what it feels like. And at the time, I think when I did my exam, they had the new mechanism where it's scaled as you answered questions. And I think there was a cutoff for when you've passed. So if you've answered 70 questions,
100.
and is it 100 questions, Grant? And
It's 100,
Grant will know
yeah.
this, and Grant tell his own story, but I think I was at 160 questions. Or 150 questions. I thought to myself, crap, I'm failing this exam. Actually, and I passed, happy to say. But I think for me, the most important thing is to focus on the areas where you're not strong. Like cryptography, I was terrible at cryptography. I spent a lot of time there. It took me all in all, I studied for a month. I had 6 months, and 6 months in security goes by very quick, as you would know. There's lots to do, always projects. I spent about 30 days, day and night studying for the exam, cramming it, understanding it. But in a way, it also helped me really understand certain concepts like the cryptography stuff because I spent that much time on it. But yeah, don't do what I did. I think, break it up. If you've got a study plan and you're breaking it up into 6 months or 8 months, focus on one domain per month. Make sure you cover enough content, make sure you understand and grasp the concepts. And by that way, you'll hopefully just use 100 questions to pass the exam.
No, thank you. Chad, maybe tell us your story. I remember at the time, Chad was still a service provider for the company where I worked. And I remember him kind of realizing, this week, oh, his exam is booked for next week.
Yeah, it's the truth. I wasn't going to say it, but now that you said it, let me share that story. So I think first off, how I studied was I'm also not big on book reading, but I knew that I had to. And what I did was I did the practice exams right in the beginning, just to figure out where my weak points were. And I knew immediately my weak points were secure software development and cryptography. So I had my weak points identified. Then from there, I listened to the audiobooks in the car on the way to work for about 4 months. And then I basically then studied just the chapters that I felt I didn't know enough in. But then I completely forgot about my exam date, and somehow through changing phones locked the booking on my calendar. And I just remember getting an email saying you're writing your CISSP in an hour. And I was sitting at the clients and I had to race to the exam. So I get there sweating, 10 minutes late, completely distraught. And then I wrote, and I found the exam fairly hard. I think for me, I found about 40% of the questions okay-ish, and then about 30% quite hard, and another 20% were like really hard, like where they gave you like 3 out of the 4 answers actually sounded right. And I think it took me about 2 hours, and I walked out thinking, I probably failed this. I didn't prepare. I even forgot my exam date, and they printed the pass. And the lady behind the counter started jumping up with excitement, and then I jumped up with excitement. And yeah, that was the story.
No, thank you, Chad. Before I share about my journey, what I wanted to mention is the ISC2 normally used to publish the number of CISSPs per country. As of late last year, they're not releasing it anymore. But about 2 years ago, there was about 430 CISSPs in the country. So from a confidence perspective, it's quite a good feeling to know that, in the country, you're one of 450, one of 500 people with this. And obviously, in terms of the marketability pool, that is quite a powerful, I want to say, negotiation factor to have on your side. From my side, I, unlike the other gentlemen that shared their stories now, I kind of read the textbooks. so my one was self-funded, and CISSP was quite a pricey exam. I think probably now between 13 and 15,000 rand for a sitting. It was a lot of money. It is a lot of money, and it was self-funded. So I didn't really want to risk not passing it. So I spent a good 6 months, on average 6 days a week, 3 hours a day type of thing. I went through 4 different textbooks, including the official one. I want to say 60 plus hours worth of video content, because what it does is, 4 different textbooks, it's the same content from different authors. So it's basically 4 different people explaining the same thing in 4 different ways. And hopefully one of the ways resonate. And then the same applies to videos. You go through 2 different courses by different, instructors, and it's all the same content explained in a different way. And then I probably did about 3,000 practice questions as well. I didn't want to leave any room for error, but I found this exam extremely difficult. I found it to be all 4 options is correct. Every question is choose the most correct. All the steps are correct. Choose the first step or choose the last step. So not an easy exam. I think the only thing that remotely comes close to me on the difficulty scale is CCSP, which is the ISC2 cloud certification. I found that one to be equally as difficult in my experience. But again, I think it will come down mainly to where you are at in your career. You could be very strong in most of the domains, and you could find it to be quite easy, or you could be weak in a couple of the domains, so you might find it to be a bit more challenging. So I think from our perspectives, it's really just based on where we were at that point in time. So yeah, I think the last question I have that we'll go through, and then we're going to open it up for the floor to pose some questions, is, what advice would you give to somebody considering the certification? So people that is in the industry, wanting to break into the industry, what guidance would you give to them? Iain, we can start with you.
Yeah, you mean what would they? Yeah, I mean whether they should do a CISSP or something else.
Yeah. So would you
Yeah,
recommend somebody to do it or not?
Yeah, I guess you have to do a bit of analysis about why you're doing CISSP as opposed to the myriad of other certifications out there, right? I think, I guess if you are aspiring security architect, ISO, information security officer or manager, obviously the consulting space where you need that broad knowledge. Maybe you work in risk. I'm not sure. They're good reasons. If you're already you want to work in cloud, if you're only interested in cloud, then there's also great certifications there. I think, as we touched on at the top, the advantage of the CISSP is the broad nature of it. I think that's what really appeals to people who value it and people who hold it. If you want to be a pen tester, go do your OSCP or your EOH. If you want to work in cloud, go do a CCSP or CCSK. Networking, become a CCIE. If you really want to have a broad knowledge of security as a foundation, then I think CISSP is the one. Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be my advice. And then yeah, just as I think we already touched on, just find the best way to learn. Right, everybody's different, and you've really got to look at yourself at how you think you're going to learn this material first. Yeah, best.
Thank you, Iain. Faseeg, your advice to anybody thinking about pursuing a CISSP?
I think obviously if you've got a career plan and you've built a strategy around what you're wanting to achieve in terms of certification and where you'd like to be in a couple of years, I think what you also need to do is obviously have the right attitude, because there's a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So having the right attitude towards what you want to achieve, having those milestones is quite key. And like what Iain said, you might be a junior right now and have your eyes on the CISSP because the ROI for you is a bigger salary, but it's not the right approach. I think you could start like something like with a CC, and then maybe gradually move up into like something in the mid-range, and then maybe look at a CISSP in maybe 3 years time, depending on really where you are in your career. And I think also if you currently find yourself 12 years in IT and you specialize in 2 or 3 of the domains before, then it might be a good idea, because your long-term goal is to be a security manager or an architect, like Iain said. And then from the onwards, you might want to go into the specialist IAP from an architecture CISSP perspective, which I think is a bit harder than the CISSP itself. So I think, have your plan, understand what your goals are, understand where you want to be within cybersecurity, and then use that as your career path. Your personal development plan is extremely key. So if you're getting your foot in the door right now, there are easy, quick wins for you, like the CC, the CompTIA Security Plus, you know, some cloud certifications, because, you know, it's almost key out at the moment, understanding what the Microsoft security ones are nice, you know, the AWS security ones are nice. So it's a good fundamentals to have under your belt, and then the CISSP could be the last mile certification. And then once you get to that point, then it really depends on what you want your career to be, or what direction you want to take it to. Yeah.
Thank you, Faseeg. Chad?
Yeah, no, I really agree with what Iain and Faseeg have said. You know, I think for me, I had Security Plus and N Plus were some of the first certs I ever did. And what I really enjoyed about getting the CISSP was I didn't want to have a platform where I had to keep submitting my CPEs to multiple different parties. And I kind of chose ISC2 to be my home. So I let my CISA and my Security Plus lapse happily because of the power that the CISSP holds. And I never felt that comfort level with any of my other micro certifications, whereas the CISSP, I was like, you know, maybe some of these micro certs can lapse now.
No, thank you so much, Chad. So from my perspective, I think what I'll mention is, so CISSP is an advanced certification, right? If you look at certifications, we normally tier them in entry level, mid tier, and advanced. So it's definitely an advanced cert. They recommend you at least 5 years experience. So precursors to the CISSP, like Chad is saying now, Security Plus is a good one to start with. And then SSCP is the ISC2 equivalent of Security Plus. I want to say probably a little bit broader than Security Plus, but not as widely popular as Security Plus. But in my mind, an absolute precursor to doing the CISSP, because it feeds in quite nicely. What I would say is, if you just want to familiarize yourself with the content, you can buy a CISSP course on Udemy for a couple of $100. You could buy a textbook on Takealot for a couple of $100, and you could really immerse yourself in the content and learn, if learning is the objective, right? When you are embarking on certifying, you know, then you must be intentional. You must want to differentiate. You must be willing to play a long game. It's not going to be overnight, and ultimately you probably want to be aspiring for leadership. So I think, you know, you can get the knowledge at a fraction of the cost at your own pace. But if you're going to be intentional about certifying, you know, then you are serious. You want to differentiate. You want to set yourself apart. You want to be one of a few people that have it. And I would absolutely recommend that. You know, in my personal experience, I say it's been an absolute game changer for me. Confidence wise, knowledge wise, you know, everything that it opens. We've got people on the call here that, you know, as part of the CISSP community and the chapter community, they've met so many other people. So I think it's a great ecosystem to be part of. I think one of the underutilized things that come with that platform, where you pay your monthly fees, Chad, or your annual fees, there's a lot of micro courses there that's actually free for all of us. And
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people don't fully capitalize on what's available on there. But there's quite a bit of good quality content there, micro learning.
Yeah, spot on. I really enjoy those micro courses, and I find it's such good bang for buck for your membership fees, as you said.
No, 100%. Yeah, so that's the questions we had. What we'll do now is we will actually open up for questions. I'll just check in the comments if there were any. But you are certainly welcome to put your hand up and come off mute, put the camera on, engage with us, give your thoughts, your comments, your concerns. You know, we can have a discussion. Oh, there's a hand. Let me just get there. Tumiso.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. Apologies, I'm not camera friendly. I'm in the dark.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity, you know, to be in the same room with the, you know, the thought leaders and experts in the industry. My journey is still in the baby steps, you know, to go to CISSP, but I believe, you know, with the passion that I have, I'm gonna reach there. And the insights that the speakers have already shared, you know, they're very, very encouraging in moving forward. But I just want to find out, you know, with the experience and strategies and learning that you got from obtaining your CISSP, how do you apply them in a real world environment in terms of like getting buy-in, you know, in applying what you've learned through your, you know, your CISSP journey? Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll maybe give my view, and then we allow the others to also speak. So we oftentimes find that what is in any body of knowledge, in a CISSP textbook is theoretical. It's the best practice guidelines. But what I do is I always keep the CISSP textbook not too far from me. So if I encounter something new, let's say you need to implement DLP, there's a reference guide of best practices and things to consider, and that then guides you, because otherwise what we find is every person is kind of doing what they believe is how it should be done. So it's a good point of reference, but certainly when you are in the real world, you find that things hardly ever, if ever, play out the way it does in the textbook. But it's a good point of reference to steer you in a way that it should be done, and to highlight those things that you should consider that maybe under normal circumstances you probably wouldn't think about. Maybe thoughts, Chad, Iain, and Faseeg?
Yeah, I mean, someone mentioned earlier about the boardroom. I can't remember who mentioned that, but I think for me that's where it benefits, right? When you have to sum up something concisely, correctly, and in a manner that somebody else has got to understand it. I think that's something that I was really able to apply what I learned through the CISSP common body of knowledge, right? You often get hit with a curveball, and because you were forced to go through this process of muscle memory, particularly trying to remember a lot of the concepts. Suddenly you're on the spot and it will come back to you, and that's when you go, yeah, that's why I spent all that time learning this stuff.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, there's like there's key things in there that you would use on a daily basis. Things, especially when you're consulting, things like least privilege or defense in depth that you'd learn about, and those things are applied to almost 50 to 70% of what you're doing on a daily basis. So there's definitely value in the frameworks and principles, besides all the other content. So I mean, that's the value you would get from actually going through the book and studying it.
Anything to add, Chad?
No, I agree. Nothing to add.
No, perfect. I hope that answers your question to me. So, Stephen?
Yes, hi, Stefan here. I work as an integrations engineer, currently in London, but moving down to Cape Town shortly. I've got a friend actually who couldn't make the call, but just for his benefit, he doesn't work in tech or cybersecurity at the moment, but he is looking to get into it. What type of advice can you guys give on how to gain experience and knowledge on these type of just in cybersecurity in general, that would be easy to learn and would actually stick? Having a full-time job, having different priorities in life, it's a lot to learn if you're going into
100%.
cybersecurity. So how can you actually learn all those things while maintaining a semi-healthy lifestyle?
No, 100%. So Stefan, where you start from your friend's perspective, it wouldn't be the CISSP necessarily. So IC2 as a body has got a range of different certifications catering for people at different levels, right? If you're coming in with no experience, possibly not even in IT, certified in cybersecurity is probably the ideal place to start. It's geared for the person with no background in cybersecurity. That would be the best place to start. Again, there's many forums, there's Udemy, there's Pluralsight, there's many things you can do. The reason why I particularly always advocate for a certification, it's because it's a fixed body of knowledge and you are preparing for an exam. So chances are you're going to go through the whole body of knowledge, as opposed to just reading articles that appeal to your interest, right? So I generally like certifications because there's a start and there's an end. And during the process, you are going to touch on topics that you had no idea existed. So my view is, start with an entry-level certification. There are a few of those things. Certified in Cyber is one. Security Plus, one could argue, is another one. Microsoft's got some. There's quite a host of good places to start. I will actually, if you engage with me outside of this call, I can share with you a list of resources, but I will allow Iain and Chad and Faseeg to share as well.
Yeah,
you
I
have any
mean,
thoughts.
you mentioned two things there in the question: knowledge and experience, right? The knowledge, I would say, is, you know, probably the easier one, right? Everyone can, you know, find their resources, study the stuff, sit an exam, pass the exam. We're all capable of doing it. Getting the knowledge that goes with it can be more tricky, because your friend won't just be able to sort of walk into a business and, I've got a CISSP now, let me loose on your firewall. You know, they're not going to let him do it. So how you get that experience is tricky. I mean, it's going to come gradually. I think there's things you can help with, get to gain that practical experience. Building your own labs is definitely one. I remember doing quite a lot of that in the early days, when I had more time on my hands. I think, you know, these days I see resources like Hack the Box and the other one, that name escapes me, similar, but anyway, I think they're extremely useful. You know, I didn't have that in the early days. Try Hack Me, someone's put it there, thanks. But I think they're great also to just get some hands-on experience in a you know, a safe environment where you're not going to break anything and get fired. I think they're both great ways to gain some experience too.
Yeah, and I'll add to that is that, you know, I think it's important also to know your strengths. I mean, cybersecurity is quite wide, and it's got 8 domains stuck with it as per the CISSP. So I think, you know, if your friend knows his strengths or her strengths, she can, or he can decide what they'd like to specialize in. I mean, you might end up being someone who's quite strong in governance, as an example, and go down that path, or you might be someone who's passionate about identity and access management and can specialize in that space. It'll make also career choices easier by understanding where those strengths are. I think, you know, you're not going to become a ethical hacker if your passion is around GRC, as an example, or might not. But I mean, naturally progression won't be the case. But I mean, so I think also that, Stefan, your friend knows his strengths, chooses that path, and works towards that path, and then he can set up, or she can set up based on that path she wants to choose, or he chooses. Yeah, that might be an easy approach.
Anything to add, Chad?
Yeah, no, spot on. I think, you know, gaining that experience is so important. I think it is one of the most important things to writing a CISSP. I wouldn't recommend to anyone with no experience to go and study CISSP and then try and write it. And there are tons of things like the Hack the Box and Capture the Flags. There's various communities on LinkedIn and on WhatsApp. I believe there's even Telegram ones now for Cape Town and even the wider South Africa. So there's so many options to get exposure and to meet people and to gain that experience. I would say go and use those options, build the experience. And then, as Faseeg says as well, find out where your niche is, because there are different pillars in cybersecurity and they require different personality types, I would say.
No, thank you so much. I hope that helps. Stefan, I also posted a link to an article that speaks to this question. Zaki?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. I just wanted to give a brief about me. Basically, I'm the project manager handling a team of CISSP certified security architects, and I'm a PMP certified. So it's been 3 years since I'm handling those people, and we are basically looking into the architecture of the application, and we are, you know, identifying the vulnerabilities, the basically the vectors and those kind of things. And I have recently, you know, decided that I should also get myself certified in CISSP. Basically, I'm handling that team, but I'm not very technically, you know, involved in that. Basically, my part is to, you know, manage them on a non-technical, like a kind of a management side. So what kind of suggestion you can give me? Like, should I study, should I start studying CISSP and like watch the videos and go with the flow, or there is some like prerequisites I should get sorted out?
Yeah, so there are prerequisites in terms of experience in domains, which you probably would have some of it already. But for your purpose, you're managing a team of security people and you really just want the understanding, right? CISSP would probably be an overkill in my view. CISSP is really for practitioners. So if you're only seeking understanding, of concepts and to see how it all fits together, you could probably get away with something like a certified in cybersecurity. And if you really want to, something like a SSCP. I would say, from what you just explained to me now, CISSP would be a little bit of an overkill. Certainly, I still believe it would give you value, when one is looking for a cybersecurity project manager and one comes with a CISSP, you immediately going to stand out, but you might easily be the only cyber PM in the world with a CISSP. All right. Thoughts from the other panelists?
I think, yeah, I think that's true, Grant. I think, and obviously, with Iain and Chad and Grant and all of us, having worked with project managers, I think it's important for project managers to understand, the direction we're taking when we're asking to perform a risk assessment, for example, especially in the application development space. And I think what might be also good for you is to understand secure DevOps or Sec DevOps and understand how that fits into the pipeline in terms of development, like if it's a CI/CD pipeline or which is based on a standard pipeline in terms of how development cycle or life cycle works. I think understanding firstly how that life cycle works in terms of the development and how the security components fit into that life cycle. I think that's more valuable to you than to going to do a CISSP, because you can, at each gate, you can ask the right questions. You can create those use cases or user stories. You can get the guys to give you what you need so that you understand. So basically, your job is to make sure that they can provide you with the assurance that the project is in a decent state before go live. And to Grant's point, I think CC might be an excellent opportunity for you to get your foot into the door, to understand at least the key principles, so that when they are telling you now, we need to follow the defense in depth principle, that you understand, it's because it's all of these things. But yeah, that's a good question, Zaki. I think there's lots of PMs around that might have very similar questions.
So just to add up, I'm already CC certified from ISC2,
Okay.
so that's done. And I just want to target something high. So that's particularly my like kind of my hobby. If I'm going into the field, I'm targeting the best certification. Like when I'm in the management, I went for PMP, nothing like CAPM or anything, or like Prince2, just directly PMP, and I qualified it. And when I'm in the security, I just wanted to qualify CISSP. So like that, I want to put my flags in every you got the gist, right?
Don't let these guys talk you out of it, Zaki. You've decided, you go for it.
Yeah, 100%.
I think one thing about the CISSP is it's also suits non-technical people as well, right? You don't have to be a dev or someone who aspires to be a firewall admin or something. There's plenty in there for someone who wants to do the project management role as well. So yeah, I mean, as long as you have your own justifications for choosing CISSP over something else, then yeah. I think to probably go back on what we've said before, you've just got to decide that's what you want to do and commit to it.
Yes.
Hope that helps,
for the
Zaki.
feedback. Of course. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate
Welcome. Ronald?
Great. Thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity. Just want to say that I don't know how I stumbled upon Grant's LinkedIn profile, but I've been following Grant for quite a bit, and I found him quite inspiring. So that's how I'm here. So I've got a couple of questions actually. So I've been working in security for quite a bit. So I think I'm sitting on 5 years now. I've gotten a few other certifications. So CH, Sec Plus, CC, all of that. And I'm now wanting to step up a bit. Two questions that I have is, so I'm actually on the path to actually studying for a CISSP. So I was quite lucky at my organization for it for me. So I'm actually currently doing, but what I have found is the sheer volume of information that you need to memorize and all of that stuff. How did you guys manage to get that in your head and let it stay? Because what I found challenging there's just so much information. I keep going through it. I myself, I remember all of this for the exam, and it gets a bit scary. So that's my first question. How did you absorbing all that data and get to a point where you feel like you're ready for exam? That's my first question. So my second question is, so my goal while I'm in the CISSP, so I've been a pen tester for 3 years. Now I moved over to the GRC department, so I'm doing some GRC stuff. So my kind of like my next goal post is to be like a security manager / information security officer. So I was thinking of doing either the CISSP or the CISM or both. So my second question would be, how does CISSP compare to the CISM? And do you think that for somebody who's wanting to be in a security manager / information security officer role, the CISSP fit for purpose, or should I do both of them just for completeness or something like that? Those are my two questions.
Okay, so Ronald, I'll take a brief stab at both of them, and then I'll allow for the panelists. So what I find is it's a lot of information, and memorizing it is not an option, right? What you really want to do is, when you are reading a specific section, you want to understand it, because when you're going to get questioned on it, it's a scenario-based question. It won't be what's the port 25 used for, right? It's going to be a scenario that requires understanding. So I think when you go through the content, whether you're reading it or whether you're watching a video where somebody's explaining it, in that moment, make sure that you understand what is being explained. And then when you are faced with questions on that scenario, with the base understanding, you should be able to deduce what the answer would be. There are strategies as well, separate to the actual content. There are also strategies that you will find online where people will say, you need to apply a management hat, so if there's a fire in the building, do you put the fire out? Or do you, evacuate the people, or do you call the fire brigade? So you need to understand there's certain type of answers that is the CISSP way of doing something. So sometimes you find you've been working in the industry for 3-4 years, and that could actually be to your disadvantage, because you might be a technical resource that is always wanting to block the port first without understanding, the bigger picture. So normally say, what would the managerial response to this be? Now, so my key answer to summarize is, focus on understanding at the time of studying, and then you should be able to reference back to that and interpret it however way the question is presented. On your question of CISM, so I normally say that when I look at certifications, I look at industry recognition, or one could say the popularity of the certification, right? Now, a lot of people will say you don't look at certs based on popularity, but things become popular when a lot of people do it and when a lot of people ask for it. Right? And a lot of people do it because it makes sense, because a lot of companies are looking for it. Now, if you Google top 5 certifications in the world, you are likely to find CISSP and CISM in that list, and CISA, and maybe 1 or 2 others more, right? I did both of those certs in a 10-day period. So I found it to be about a 85 to 90% overlap in content. So I spent 6 months intensely studying for CISSP, and then I spent another 10 days just briefly reading through the CISM material, and I did both. So they are fundamentally different. I think the one is more management level, tilting towards risk, and the one is more practitioner level, dabbling in really understanding the nuts and bolts. All right, that being the CISP. The CISM is a little bit more on a high level management, leaning towards a risk management mindset. That's my take on the two.
One quick question, maybe just to add to that. I mean, what would your view be on like a concentration within the CISSP, like the ISSMP, which is basically a security management professional addition to the CISSP certification? Do you think it would balance out from a CISM perspective?
Faseeg, you see, the challenge is I don't often see jobs asking for it, right?
Yeah,
Now, the driver for me when it comes to certifications, there has to be a marketability value, because like I said, if I only want to learn, I watch a YouTube video or I buy a book and I read it, right? But
yeah,
I don't really see a lot of people asking for a CISP concentration, but a lot of people ask for the CISP.
yeah.
So I've looked at the concentrations, and I might dabble in them at some point in time, But right now, I'm not quite convinced on the return of investment unless you are wanting to really distinguish yourself as an architect and you go down that architecture path, or I think there's a healthcare one as well.
Yeah.
But I haven't done them, so I can't really give an informed opinion there.
Because I mean, just to add to Ronald, because if you do a CISSP and you really have like a BCom or some sort of a management diploma, I mean, that gives you the management capability already. I mean, you would take that and combine it with your CISSP and maybe will round you off. I mean, well, provide a well-rounded character in terms of your accomplishments and, you know, your abilities. So yeah, and I personally wouldn't do a CISM. I'll just do a CISSP and I'll bolt on additional certs, technical certs. And, you know, one day when I've my big boy pants on, maybe do an MBA, and then you wouldn't need to do anything else, really. Yeah.
I'll just maybe add one more thing before I give over to Iain. So when I did the cyber leadership program through the Cyber Leadership Institute, right? It's an Australian-based company. They recommend there, from their experience, they say that as a cyber leader / CISO, you want to have at least either a CISSP or a CISM. So they've used one of the two, ideally both. All right. Obviously, in addition to the course they're offering, but they recognize both equally in terms of something that a CISO should have. Iain, your thoughts?
No, I kind of agree. I wonder whether there's a bit of needle between CISMs and CISPs, you know. For me, the CISP is really, you know, if you're aiming high, if you want to be the CISO, then you got to get that one. For me, I think there's a bit of overlap, as you said. I think you summed it up quite nicely. I think if you want to be a security administrator or a security manager, you can probably, you know, but do the CISM. If you really want to be you know, an architect or CISO, then for me, one level deeper is the CISP.
No, thank you. Any thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, completely agree. And I was actually thinking, now that we brought up the CISM, I wasn't sure if we're allowed to mention it here or not.
No, we can mention anything, Chad. It's about sharing experiences.
Great. It might be more suited for the person who asked the previous question. So the CISM might be more suited for a management-only cyber role, whereas I do think the CISP elevates that a bit and brings in more technical knowledge.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so is it Bishard? Ronald, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps. I was just going to ask one final question to say, so you did the route that you took of going for the CISSP, and then also at the end combining with CISM kind of helps. So it's possible to have that overlap and study for the CISM for a shorter period of time after studying for the CISSP.
Yeah. So Ronald, one thing that I personally always do is I normally group certification. So when I studied the CCSP, which is a very intense cloud certification, I also did the CCSK and other cloud certs in the same time, right? So I kind of study cloud for a 3-4 month period, and then I will do 2 or 3 cloud certifications to get the most out of it. When I studied Security Plus, I did SSC Security Plus and SSCP kind of in the same month period as well, because you are putting in the time, you know, in any case, going through the content. And if the funding allows, you know, I normally do advocate for grouping it as far as possible. Okay. Bishard. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You're on mute, eh?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for this platform, firstly. What I've noticed, a lot of the questions that have actually come up is very interpersonal. So it's obviously directed to the individuals and the industry. So based on that and what you previously stated, and this is open to the board because you've touched on it all individually. When you're looking at pursuing the certification, especially when you're looking at different circumstances, and I know a lot of people would want to know this, but obviously they might be a bit too shy or afraid to bring it up. When you are looking at it, you're obviously preparing for the marathon, not the sprint, right? And in cases where it's personally funded, like yourself, Grant, you're obviously preparing on a longer period of time. So with that being said, a lot of people would want to reach out to, you've stated it early on, mentors in a sense. How would they go about that? Because remember, a lot of them come from different industries. So like myself, coming from a business background, you are looking to develop in a certain area, you obviously need to follow those people. So my question would be, how would you go about linking to mentors within this specific field? And then obviously the preparation over that period of time based on that mentorship.
No, 100%. So Bishad, the chapter is meant to be in a way that vehicle, right? So one of the things that we could do, and I saw a comment or question earlier in the chat, is around study groups. So if there's a need to say, you know, can we do a CISSP study group, and we find that we've got 5 or 10 people embarking on the journey, what we as the chapter can do is we can say, this week we're looking at cryptography, and we get some really smart cryptography people on a call or at the venue, and we just discuss the topic. And you see, from a chapter perspective, what I can commit to is something like study groups. We could, on our LinkedIn or wherever, we could do forums where you could post a question and you could say, what are your thoughts on this? And again, you as a member of the chapter, you can drive that. You know, you could say, Grant, you know, I would like to, you know, manage the forum and just see if there's appetite for people to participate. What we have is we have a lot of people that is willing to offer expertise and time and lessons learned, so that other people can avoid it. All 4 people on this call, you know, we find a lot that people have questions, and we thought, let's have a Ask a CISSP series. I think it's quite well represented, and we could have another one. You know, if we need another one next week, we do another one. So I hope that helps. But maybe the other panelists have some thoughts also.
I think the study group is a great idea. I've actually tried to get it going a few times myself. I think the problem I've had when I've tried to get it move in the past is you have to have a core number of people who are committed to it. And again, it comes down to committing to getting the thing, but also on the same timeline. You know, if we started now and we said, okay, we're all going to try and get this thing done by November, and then you work as a team, right? So you maybe meet the same time every week. Somebody takes a domain or a subdomain, presents on it, and then someone else takes responsibility to do it the next week. That I think that would have been a good thing for me to do as well. When I studied, I tried this, and we didn't. You know, we fell into the same hole. We had people working on different timetables. So I think the study group works well if you have a core. It doesn't have to be big. You know, 5 people maybe who are all working to the same goal.
No, 100%. Yeah. So I think, Bishad, thank you for raising that. What I certainly will do is I'll put out a post to test the water to see, are there people that's keen to, you know, be part of a study group? It's going to be relatively easy for us to find domain experts for the different domains. I don't foresee that being a challenge. And then what we do is similar to what we do now, but we get 4 people who's experts in, you know, one domain, and people can just shoot their questions maybe in advance or whatever the case is, and we see where it leads to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gerald, I think we'll take Gerald's question. And then what I will do is we on the hour, we'll take Gerald's question, and then everybody who's posted a question in the chat, I will respond to those questions if that is fine. Okay. Gerald?
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for this forum. I appreciate this. I wrote my CISSP last week Friday, and I provisionally passed it. So yeah, it was grueling. It was grueling. I bought 2 exams, and the first one I wrote at the end of Jan, and which I failed horribly. I only met one of the domains, and yeah, and it gave me another, you know, a month and a half to study, and then I just worked through everything, and Friday I passed it. So I am very happy. So my actual question, that was my intro. My actual question is actually, what would be the next cert to for me while the knowledge is still fresh?
I think it speaks to, you know, what is your goal? Where do you want to specialize in? Maybe give us some insight into what are you aspiring to?
So, I mean, I've been 22 years in IT. So, starting as a Microsoft techie and working my way up as a cybersecurity consultant, etc. And finally got to writing the CISSP when I got to the point where I actually had my 5 full years as a cybersecurity expert. So for that endorsement, tick in the box. And I'd like to eventually aspire to get to the top.
Gerald, purely my opinion, if you just been through the CISSP material and the finances allow, CISM wouldn't be a bad idea. That is just my personal view. But I know Faseeg has got a different view. I can see it in the look in his eyes.
No, it's really horses for courses. I think, for me, again, depending on what you're doing, depending on what the goal is, I think focus on that. I think, focus, I mean, for me, at the moment, personally, and I know Grant has a different view as well, but I'm studying to do some AWS certs, particularly because I'm in a space where I'm working with a lot of clients that are developing in AWS or using AWS for all sorts of things, or even Azure. So understanding things like identity and access management within the 8 domains and how it applies to, as Grant mentioned earlier, that CISSP is agnostic, but those principles you can apply basically anywhere. How they apply in AWS, how they apply in Azure. For me, I wanted to understand the nuts and bolts of that. Understand, tooling, and that's me. So you might be different. So I think, look at what that end goal is, like Grant mentioned, and try to look at what the stepping stones are to be really good at that. Because ultimately you want to be the best at what you do, right? So look at what certifications you need to be the best at what you want to do.
Yeah, currently I do cybersecurity operations. So I'm a cybersecurity operations manager.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, so in operations, you're dealing with all sorts of things: vulnerability management, identity access management, operations, patch management, if there's a flavor of that. So, I mean, I would look at trying to really so maybe personally for me, I'm really passionate about vulnerability management, and that's within the security operations space. So for me, I look at a lot of things around research in vulnerability management, looking at beyond just CVSS or what the severity is. I look at how vulnerabilities get exploited. I try to understand how to make it easier for businesses to remediate. So for me, I'm passionate about that stream. So I know Chad is very technical, and I know is doing tons of other stuff. But I mean, so again, it really does depend on what you really want to be great at. And if you're in operations, and how many things are in operations, you can be really great at all of them. So yeah.
Thanks very much for that one.
Thank you, Gerald. I think maybe I don't know if there's any closing remarks from Iain and Chad before I close off.
No, I mean,
Chad?
Maybe alluding to something Faseeg just said about the cloud and how that applies to CISSP. A lot of the principles in CISSP are as age old as the sun, like defense in depth, right? I mean, I remember I used to do a presentation with a slide with a castle in it, talking about like the layers of defense. I think for me, something that complements CISSP well would be something like the cloud certs. If you're a CISSP, but yet you've got that real understanding of how architecture is moving into Azure and AWS, that's a really good complement. So that's kind of where I think I need to aim next.
Spot on.
No, thank you. Sorry, Chad, you were saying?
I was saying that's spot on. I mean, I've only done one cert recently, and that was my Google Cloud Security Professional. And it's just to bolster the knowledge the CISSP gave me and kind of apply that technical knowledge in the cloud. So it's always nice to do some bolt-on certs, depending on where your interests are.
Thank you so much, Chad. Yeah, I think on that note, we could probably, wrap it up here. So I wanted to say thank you to Iain, Chad, and Faseeg for their time, on the webinar, sharing expertise. More importantly, I want to thank everybody who took the time out to actually join this. For me personally, it's quite heartwarming to know that we are able to shed a little bit of light, answer some questions for people. So thank you for that. From a chapter perspective, we really want to be that body that makes it a bit easier. If you have a question, send us a message. For the most part, we will try to help. We all have day jobs, but where we find the time, we will try and assist. We try and do these webinars. We try once a month, but we find ourselves now having one almost every week. But when people are willing to share and people are willing to absorb, I don't see why not. We've got one next week. Confidence Stavili. She's a global leader in API security, so it's a good one coming up as well. And we're taking a bit of a break. But thank you so much. Any suggestions, questions, pop us a message, chat it in. We will, whatever is feasible and whatever will benefit the majority of the members, I don't see why we will not explore that. So thank you so much and have a great evening.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Grant.
Okay,
Thanks, Iain.
bye-bye.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Yes, bye.